Paula Derks, on the eve of AEA 2016, it's going to be an interesting year.
It is going to be an interesting year. I have every bit of faith that it's going to be a good year.
Well, the aviation needs it. And the one part that's been interesting about covering AEA and avionics matters is that the avionics industry, to a certain extent, at least for the last 2 decades, has been the true innovator in aviation. We have not seen the level of innovation and disruption among the power plant or the airframers per se, outside of some composite work here and there. And the true utility of aviation has been led by innovations within the avionics sector. Why does that happen here and not elsewhere?
Well, I think it's due to the manufacturers of these state-of-the-art technologies that they continue to create and engineer and produce. I think there's also a demand from the flying community that expect more out of the equipment, the electronics in their cockpit. You know, we can equate it to the consumer electronics industry, and they have the latest smartphone and the latest tablet and internet and Wi-Fi in every possible place. They want to equate that to their cockpit. They want it in the air. And the technology then naturally grows from the consumer side. And I think that's why we see this, as you call it, this innovation that's been going on for the last 20 years in the avionics industry. Unfortunately, you know, as the economy happens, and sometimes there's those downturns, avionics has not stopped. The technology has continued to grow, and obviously that benefits my membership, the manufacturers and the repair stations that are installing all of these wonderful high-tech pieces of equipment as well.
There seems to be an interesting rallying point. We're getting to a bit of a crossroads between innovations in hardware and innovations in software and applications. How do you see that sorting itself out over the next few years?
Over the last few years and in the future, it's definitely a paradigm shift, and especially for my industry, the repair stations, they're, you know, obviously bench repair is becoming obsolete. It's more, you're trained on software upgrades and how to make the systems work with software-based technologies.
We've watched phenomenal technologies occur in the consumer and some of the business communities. We've watched avionics keep pace and in some ways even eclipse what's happening outside, especially in regards to what's happened with display technology and the like. Where are the new breakout technologies in avionics going to come from?
That is a great question, Jim. And not to spill the beans, tomorrow morning we're going to see some of those new technologies introduced at our new product introduction section, of which Aero-News is live streaming for us. There are 30 companies tomorrow taking the stage to introduce new products and new services and new features to some already existing products. But obviously, as we've all seen more and more ADS-B offerings to help meet that mandate, we're also seeing a lot of audio options in the cockpit, and then cabin entertainment systems as well is a huge market that is exploding, not only in the, you know, the traditional business jet model, but also kind of trickling down into your small GA and even experimental aircraft.
The industry overall, how do you judge its health at this point?
We are, I started to say struggling. I don't think we're struggling. I think there's promise ahead. As everyone knows, you know, you can't sit here and say everything is wonderful and great and fine. The whole industry is rolling up our sleeves, and we're working to maintain the momentum of new technologies and make sure that the flying community is aware of those technologies and the efficiency and the enhancement and safety for their, you know, flying habits when they install these avionics pieces of equipment. We're hopeful for the future. As you know, we produce a quarterly avionics market report, and this examines the value of the avionics industry as reported by more than 20 major avionics manufacturers and instrument manufacturers as well. They report their sales to us on a quarterly basis. We have a third-party company that compiles the data, and we announce the one total sales figure each quarter. In 2015, we did show a slight dip in sales overall for year-end sales compared to 2014, and that was about a 4.4% dip. First quarter 2016, which I will officially announce in the morning during my opening address, first quarter is showing a little more than a 3% dip over first quarter 2015. So those sales figures are mainly reflective in the retrofit market. Forward fit market still remains good. So I think our efforts are going to be focused more on the retrofit market in 2016 and beyond. I think just the mandate with ADS-B will help increase some of those sales figures as well as we continue on through 16 and into 17.
How much of the decrease in overall productivity of the industry would you ascribe to a somewhat moribund airframe production scenario, especially on the new airframe side right now? It's we keep thinking that we've seen the bottom of how many singles and how many twins they're going to produce, and then the bottom keeps getting a little lower each year.
Right. Yeah, those are not great numbers. Until we can do, I believe, an industry-wide campaign, again, to promote flying, promote aviation, work with the FAA and other international regulatory agencies to streamline the ease of getting a pilot's license and maintaining a medical certificate, and gathering these young people that are choosing motorcycles or recreation vehicles or even high-tech computer games over getting into the seat of an airplane and taking off to the sky. That's the message that we need to send as well. It is an investment, obviously, but it can also turn into a very efficient business tool as well as they grow older and hopefully use the plane in their business. Unless the industry works together to really promote general aviation and flying, then in turn, hopefully the manufacturing assembly lines will be kick-started again and more airplanes will be produced. Until that time, it will be used aircraft and retrofitting those old existing panels.
Well, the FAA reauthorization is slowly working its way through Congress. It's gotten past the Senate. I guess the House takes another shot at it, and then we'll see what we get as a result. And of course, they whittle away here and whittle away there, and their little pet projects and all. What particularly in the reauthorization bill gives AEA some hope, and what areas gives it concern?
Definitely hope is the fact that the Senate passed a bipartisan funding bill, which is a great sign to begin with no language for user fees, which is a great thing for our industry, plus a call for certification reform within the agency. In other words, streamlining certification and installation procedures for industry. That opens up a wide range for the manufacturers, both of airframe and avionics products, to more efficiently produce the equipment, produce the airframes without the burden of all these steps in the regulatory process. And so that is a money saver right there. You know, these manufacturers invest hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to certify and bring a product to market, whether that is an airplane or whether it's a piece of equipment. And therefore, the price tag at the end of that, when it's off of the manufacturing line, it's a hefty price. If we can work with the FAA and other international regulatory agencies to streamline the certification and installation regulations, that's a win-win for all of us. The downside to the reauth bill, although it's kind of off the table right now, as you know, the House introduced the concept of privatizing the air traffic control system. We feel, along with a lot of our sister trade associations, that that is not a step in the right direction, especially considering the privatized corporation that would be formed would consist of a board primarily weighed by the airlines. And that's never a good and healthy thing for general aviation when the airlines have the majority voice.
Well, of course, the airlines work so well.
Yeah, exactly. But they've never really thought that general aviation pays our fair share, and we beg to disagree. We do feel like the current funding model of aviation fuel tax is the way to continue to fund the national airspace system.
Well, negating the fact that 60 to 70% of the infrastructure that's built within the NAS right now is specifically for high-speed, high-altitude traffic.
Absolutely. So those are the pluses and the minuses that we see in FAA reauthorization. I applaud the Senate for moving ahead, taking out a lot of the added amendments that were added to this bill and saying that we need to move ahead and we need to make sure the most powerful and strongest aerospace system in the world is fully funded, and it needs to be done now.
Through the Part 23 rewrite, both from the standpoint of what of it currently exists and the many proposals that came to this point, there seems to be a push at least on the general aviation side, to find ways for the industry to develop consensus standards and be a bit more independent of the FAA so long as there is a recognized standard. We've already done much of this through ASTM, through the LSA group, and 100 and some odd designs that have been quote unquote certified. Do you see some potential for allowing the FAA to do what it does with the larger business aviation and commercial aviation segment and allowing consensus standards to start taking over the general aviation arena?
Absolutely. The AEA has been one of the leaders in pushing consensus standards. We sit on various ASTM standards committees in with various segments of the general aviation industry. And we are definitely behind that. Again, it kind of equates to the reauthorization language calling for streamlining certification. This is just a nod toward ASTM standards and going the consensus standards route instead of your traditional regulatory philosophies.
How realistic do you think it may be, though, that we could achieve some semblance of autonomy through a consensus standard system, whether it be ASTM or an equivalent body, for the general aviation, maybe even some of the light commercial aviation segment?
I think it's a reality. And I think a large part of why I say this is because I think there's a different culture within the FAA right now. They realize that they are on restricted budgets, and they realize they only have so much manpower to continue to operate in the traditional ways that they did through, aviation safety inspectors and them having the power of approval of certifications and installations. I applaud them. I really do, because I think they are looking beyond in the future, as all of us are, as industry has been for a long time, and they are recognizing that going with standards has worked in other industries as well. Look at the automotive industry. It works very well in that industry, and in aviation, I think it equally can work as well, hence the Part 23 rewrite. And the amount of time that it's taken to get to this point with the pending release of the Part 23 rewrite, usually those take years and years and years to make that dramatic of a change, a culture change. This has taken a few years, and for that, AEA stands behind them, and we applaud them for seeing the possibility of what this could bring.
Well, let me put you on the spot. All of a sudden, I've been transported out of here. Michael Huerta is sitting in this seat. He's in a mood to deal. What arguments do you put forth to the administrator? Of course, he'll be here tomorrow. What arguments do you put forth before the administrator right now that would significantly ease the way forward and help rebuild aviation?
Probably a lot of what we're talking about. Again, I don't know that I would challenge him on a lot of things, because I think Administrator Huerta has been behind a lot of the progress in the last few years on the rewrite, on recognizing new technologies. What I would probably challenge him on and ask him to investigate further is something that the AEA has been asking for quite a few years. We're talking about new products and how rapidly avionics is evolving, and all these new products are coming to market. We, AEA, as one of our offerings to our members, offer a lot of hands-on training opportunities. The convention, our regional meetings, website training in our headquarters, for the avionics technicians to learn these pieces of equipment, how to install them, how to troubleshoot them, how to integrate them into the cockpit. Yet, the FAA aviation safety inspectors who are tasked with approving these installations are not trained on these pieces of equipment. They have to rely a lot on what the repair station is telling them. We, AEA, has asked the FAA for many years to find money in the budget to send their inspectors to training, to send them to some AEA venues, let them sit side by side, and several of them do. Some inspectors do. I've even had inspectors tell me they come on their own dime because they realize the importance of getting trained on this new technology that they're going to approve in the field. That would be my hope, and probably one of my points to stress to the administrator is these inspectors want and need training on all this new technology. It makes their job much easier and makes their use of time much more efficient.
Aero-News Network's coverage of the 59th Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show, live from Orlando, Florida, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors.
Are you stall smart? Ever since Orville and Wilbur took to the skies, pilots have been taught that the more airspeed you have, the better off you are. But over the last 100 plus years, we've learned that's not always the case. Take stalls, for example. The common belief is that if you have sufficient airspeed, the aircraft won't stall. The fact is, an airfoil always stalls at the same critical angle of attack in relation to the relative airflow, regardless of airspeed, configuration, or weight. Learn more at aspenavionics.com.
Imagine avionics. Avionics that make your life simpler rather than more complicated. Imagine that when things go wrong, your avionics not only detects bad information, but corrects it automatically. That's the avionics system Avilution is creating, so you won't have to imagine it much longer.